Hi, I'm Blessing. I'm a second year, and my question is, what do you think is the most important lesson students can learn while they try to integrate like faith with their education? Thank you.
Well, hey everybody, and welcome to Meet the Prof. Hey, I'm Shane Hartley, and my friend Spence Hackney and I have been collecting questions like you heard there from college students, and then we interview Christian professors. And our mission is simple. We want to encourage Christ-centered conversations on the college campus. So glad you're here. Thank you for listening. And we have a treat of being able to hear from Dr. Greg Williams. We sat down with Greg, and I think you'll really enjoy getting to know him. And please, if you like this, subscribe or follow on your podcast app. Share it with someone you think it might be helpful with. And without further ado, here is our interview with Greg Williams.
I guess one of the things I tend to think of myself as a little bit of an atypical engineer. So I'm not the stereotypical engineer is they're really good at math. They don't communicate well. The kind of the standard joke is, how you tell an introverted engineer from an extroverted engineer. Well, an extroverted engineer looks at your shoes when he's talking to you versus him looking at an introvert looking at his own shoes. And so those stereotypes, I don't think have ever fit me. So I'm not the most organized. As Peggy will attest, my desk looks like a bomb went off. And so I feel like in my head, all these thoughts and stuff are all kind of jumbled up like a bowl of spaghetti. So, and in that, I think is a bit of an emotional piece. So like I like to read when I was younger. I don't do this now. I probably should. I used to write poetry. I enjoy the arts. One of my children is very creative, and God, we love to go to art museums and then I love to see what she creates, and I really get into it. And it's emotional for me to see some of that. A movie will make me cry. My wife and I were such oddballs. She likes to watch the action, and I like to watch the Oscar-winning ones, and the tear jerkers. And even just the other night, we're watching a commercial on TV, and I turned and looked at her, and she's like, "I can't believe it's making you cry." So maybe part of this is I'm getting older too, but so I don't have a problem dealing with my emotions, and so. Singing in church often moves me, the chills. I don't know that I cry in church, but I can get really moved with harmony from singing, and I can't sing worth a flip, but when I hear harmony and I just like, oh my gosh, that is God's best instrument, and people that do that so well, it can move me. So I'm fine with that.
So how does an emotional artsy person who cries at movies, how do you get into civil engineering? How did that happen?
Well, it's funny because this was so when I was in high school, I was good in math and science, and so this was back in the 80s, and my dad just said, "Oh, you should be an engineer," and I'm like, "Engineers drive trains." I didn't know what an engineer was, but I'm like, okay, that's, I did not know what engineering was. And so at the time, I thought I wanted to be a pilot. I don't fly, but I used to love to I just thought flying was cool. And I used to thought I wanted to join the military and fly jets off aircraft carriers. I just thought that would be the coolest thing in the world. And so when my dad was like,
that's because we all saw Top Gun about the same time. Well, to be a pilot, he wanted to be a pilot. We all want to be
right. Well, so I'll just say this was before Top Gun.
Okay.
So Top Gun came out when I was in college. So this when I was a kid. And so I said, well, if I'm going to be an engineer and I like to fly, then when I applied to NC State, NC State is a school that you actually, or back then anyway, I think you still can, you apply directly into a degree program. You weren't a university studies. And then, after your sophomore year, you declared a major. You declared a major as a senior in high school when you applied. And so I applied into aerospace engineering. So I said, hey, engineering and aerospace is flying, and I got a letter back and they said, congratulations, you've been accepted to state. Aerospace is full. Pick another one. And and they sent this one sheet of paper. This was before the internet. And they said, here's these other engineering disciplines. And they gave these little bullet statements and blurbs about what they were. And my dad and I sat down at the kitchen table and we talked about them. And he said, I think you need to go into electrical. And I said, I can't see electricity. I just know you flip the light switch, it works.
Yeah.
That doesn't interest me. Civil was outdoors. And I said, I don't want to spend my life sitting behind a desk. I want to be outdoors. So we picked civil. And again, it was God's grace. That was the exact perfect program for me, because it was outdoors and it was water and earth related, which led me into my current specialty with coastal engineering.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so you obviously love what you do. And so you found you loved this field of study through all this.
Yeah. So I was telling a student that was in talking to me the other day that I said, look, I'm not saying this is how it is for everybody, but so my specialty is coastal engineering, which is it's a subspecialty of civil engineering, and even maybe in a sub of civil is water resources, and then this is even so it's really getting into the details. And I took a class at State almost on a whim. A friend of mine said, "Hey, Greg, let's take this introduction to coastal engineering class. Looks like fun." And I like the beach. And I said, sure. And we took it. And I didn't even know that there was a thing called coastal engineering, much less you could take a class or study it, or that you could get a job in it. And that semester, I just got bit by the bug. And I just said, this is the coolest stuff in the world. It's almost like, in Christmas Vacation, when they find the Christmas tree in the pasture, and you see the lights and the angels singing, that's kind of how I felt about coastal engineering. And I told the student, I said, look, it's not that way for everybody. I'm just saying that's how it was for me.
Yeah. So now I'm just picturing you ripping the tree out by the root and strapping it on top of your car. And so this is my mind. I'm already like 3 steps down there. Thanks for that.
Yeah. You're welcome. Good. Happy to distract you that way.
Yeah.
I like hearing about your conversations with your students, and that's one thing I've always appreciated about you is you really love your students, and I know that you really care how they're doing, and you want to help them when they're struggling. How much are you able to share with them about your faith in Jesus?
Well, so now that I'm a full-time lecturer, I'm still trying to figure that out a little bit, how I do that well. So the one way that I did is the first day of class, as I just told them, I'm a Christian, I go to church. And then I didn't just say that, I said, and this was in all my classes, I followed up and said, whether you believe like I do or not, I would love to speak with you. I'd love to hear where you are on this. Come by in my office. Let's just chat.
Wrong.
So I didn't say, I'm trying to not feel like I'm trying to convert somebody, because I don't want to come across that way. I just want to see where people are at. And so the really cool thing is several times over the fall and spring semester, I've had a student come in. In fact, this student came in last week. He reminded me of that. He said, you remember last semester you said you were a Christian, and I kind of wrote that down in my mind. And that was the lead in for him to come and speak to me. And so we had a really great conversation about what he's thinking and looking for God's guidance in his life and with his career choice or his major choice and what that means for a career. So I've had multiple conversations when students have come into my office about their faith. I'm a little reluctant's not the right word. I feel like I need to be careful how I do that when I'm standing in front of a class as part of the lecture I don't shy away from it. And if anybody asks me, I'll freely talk about it, but I don't want to come across as if I'm preaching in class. Mm-hmm. So far, doing that last fall, I think opened the door for people to feel comfortable. Well, I hope anyway. And some have felt comfortable to come speak to me out of class, in my office.
I would love to have a professor like you. And Spence has noticed this constantly. So, Greg, you don't have the benefit of hearing these other interviews yet that we've had, but a very common theme that Spence has brought out is professors like you saying, I invite conversations with my students. I want them to come talk to me about anything, but especially
Right.
spiritual things in Jesus. So I would have
Right.
loved to have
Yeah.
that, Professor. I never had
I, I
that.
would have too. And I never had that. I never had that all through any of my undergrad and graduate. I was always intimidated. Well, at least in undergrad, I was intimidated by my professors, and I would avoid ever going to their office. And so I could never, it would have blown my mind to have had that kind of conversation with a professor when I was an undergrad.
In your experience, are most professors like you, or are we just talking to the good ones? Yeah,
I don't know. That's a good question, Spence. I think there's a mix. I think the things that you guys are doing and what Crew is doing, Faculty Commons is a thing that exists now that didn't exist when I was in college. So I'm not suggesting that there weren't Christian professors back then, but there wasn't really a mechanism, and maybe they were felt restricted on being able to speak about their faith, and so I just don't remember it happening. And so I think there's not that there's more now, but maybe their Christian professors are a little more open and comfortable being open about their faith. I, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for me to say. I think the opportunities and the support network is there better now, I'm guessing, than it was, 40 years ago.
or at least it's easier for it to be visible. They're kind of easier.
Yes.
Have you ever got any pushback from administration or faculty or anybody on sharing the fact that you're a Christian openly?
Absolutely not. Now, I've only been a full-time faculty since August, so it's. But nobody has said anything to me, whether it's been students or faculty, or nobody's ever given me any direction on here's what you can or can't say, or and that's why I think is really good about that first day, syllabus day or whatever. It's really about introduction, and part of that introduction is me. Well, you know what? Here's who I am. Here's where I come from. Here's what makes me tick. And so I don't think anybody can tell me, no, you can't do that. Then I'm like, well, I'm telling about myself, and I think it's important for the students to know about me. So no, but I haven't gotten any pushback.
I had a business attorney tell me not too long ago that you were safer from liability if you told the person you're hiring up front that you're a Christian. And so you just said, hey, we are faith informed here on how we make decisions, however you want to word it. And that way, if you fired them later for something, they knew up front what they were getting into. It's sort of that.
Right.
So I think there's a certain transparency. It's almost like a graciousness to the student to say, hey, this is my worldview. This is how I think,
Right.
Because you can't separate that. Like,
right.
To some degree, Christianity is a worldview. It's how I think.
Yes.
It's how I view the world.
Right.
And it's a graciousness to say that up front.
Yeah,
that's great. Tell us a little bit. You said something in our kind of pre-show about everybody's on this spiritual journey, and you seem to have a lot of respect for that. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think it's probably founded in my own spiritual journey. So when that kind of time I from ninth grade all the way to when I came to know the Lord, but I didn't really know what that meant, and I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't know what that meant as far as living, but I knew that God had spoken to me in a way that He had not spoken to me before, and it took me my own path a while to figure that out, and it was God bringing people into my life to help me do that. So knowing that we're all in different places and how we come, I'm a bit. It takes me longer to learn something, and that's why I tell my students all the time and says, look, I don't expect you to get this the first time. It certainly didn't. When I was in your shoes, I didn't get the first time. So really coming to understand really who God was and what God has done and what He's continuing to do. It took me a while of maturity and growing, and right people come alongside, and Bible studies and a spouse and those conversations. And so recognizing that's happening to other people and that everybody's in a different spot. That's why I love to talk to people. You find out where they're at. You talk to one person and maybe they're a stronger Christian than I am. Hey, that's great. What are you reading? What have you learned lately? You talk to another person that said, I think I've been going to church. I said, oh, really? Well, why are you going to church? Who are you going to church? So you just it gives you a different entry point to talk to them by having that conversation about where they're at.
Yeah. I love what you just said there about just the notion that this student could be further along in their faith than you are. Because I think people assume as a professor, you've got it all figured out. You've got everything figured out. And you just by saying that said, I may not have this all figured out. So I'm on a journey too. I'm on a journey. Shane's on a journey.
Yeah.
That's
from
great.
a technical piece, I try to be very transparent, and I'm probably, well, I won't say probably, I am often very self-deprecating. So I crack jokes about myself in class because I want them to, that's my personality. I'm kind of a goofball anyway, but I'm not afraid to go. And there have been times I've been lecturing class and they'll start asking questions. I'll turn and look at the board and I'll go, yeah, that's just a really bad job. Tell you what, y'all just set that aside. Let me go work on this and see if I can explain this better next class. Or, I'll make a joke like I'll write something up wrong and somebody will call me out, say, hey, was that supposed to be 3.1 instead of 1.3? And I'll look back at the board and I go, oh yeah. And I'll kind of erase it and I'll look back at them like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, kind of thing. Or I'll say my first mistake of the day, and then I'll do it again. I'll say my second mistake of the day. So I try to be funny so they realize that I am just a person. I make mistakes. And so anyway.
Have you found that helps them trust you more? Do you feel like you're more approachable?
I hope it does. I hope it tears down that wall a little bit between student and faculty. I want I crack jokes sometimes and I go on tangents. I'll joke about tangents or I'll tell country bumpkin stories. Like one of my favorite sayings is, especially with some of the classes we take or that I teach are, there's more than one way to do something. You can solve a problem more than one way. And I'll say there's more than one way to skin a cat. Yeah. That's an old, country saying. And then I have to explain what that means. It's not a feline, it's a catfish, or at least how I learned it. And then I go in, and then I go down this tangent about what a catfish is, how a catfish is different, how you skin a catfish, and then I get done telling the story and I go, what are we talking about? And so I do that because I want them to realize that I'm a regular person and I love saying something that's kind of funny and around seeing the class kind of rolling their eyes at me or laughing. So hopefully that's, kind of just tearing down that wall just a little bit, that they might be more likely to ask me a question after class or stop by my office hours because they know that I'm not all pious and, head in the clouds kind. So that's my one. It's just me, but that's kind of an ulterior motive. Is I just want to kind of tear down that wall a little bit.
Know that referred to catfish. So you're a good teacher. I'm sitting here learning too.
So have y'all ever caught catfish? I mean, the thing about catfish is they don't have scales. They're skinned. So you skin a catfish.
And the second, anyway, dropped the word fish, and it became, how do you skin?
And I'm sitting here thinking, like, we use the rusty pair of pliers, and what other way is there? Like, I want to learn how you skin a catfish. So,
right.
That's great. I feel like the subtext for Meet the Prof ought to be like, they're just real people. Like, because like I feel like with a student, if we could just dispel that, like, these professors are just real people on a spiritual journey who care about you as a person, and they have stuff going on in their life too. Like the world, the academic world will be a better place if everybody bought into that.
So an example I do that is, I tell, like, I love to tell these stories in class. I said, when I told my friends that I was going to be teaching this class I'm teaching this semester, this is the fifth time I've taught it. I said, when I told my friends I was teaching this class, my friend says, well, Greg, didn't you have to pass it to be able to teach it? and I'm like, I passed it. And then I tell them, I said, what grade I got in this class when I was your age? I got a C. And oh, by the way, the semester prior, I failed 2 classes the same semester, Calc 3 and Chem 2. And guess what, guys? I stuck it out and I graduated, and I did not have a great GPA, but I got to grad school. I got a job, and look at me, I got a PhD. So, I am not perfect. I have fallen on my face over and over again. And so I just want them to realize that they don't have to, if they make a B or even if they make a C, it's okay.
That's such a good word for engineering students, especially. But the ones I know are so focused on that grade. and it's like
Yeah.
the end
Yeah.
of the world if I didn't get the thing. There's so much stress and
Right.
pressure, and you're seeing
Right.
these students just kind of crack under it.
Right. Right.
Where my son goes to school, you've got mental health days trying to help students deal with
Yeah.
it. And so you're
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
a service by saying, take some of this pressure off yourself. If you fail it, you're still going to be called an engineer, just like if you made an A. Like at the end of
Yeah.
the day, well, not if you fail,
Yeah.
but if you make the C, right, you still call
Yep.
it an engineer.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Great. Good stuff.
I think you're speaking to a lot of students here.
You're speaking to me. Like I heard, I was in your shoes, man. Like Stat 23, Calc, those were like the bane of my existence. I made a
Oh yeah. Yeah.
stat test, and I'm like, what is
Yeah.
25? That's like, anyway.
It's like 50%
Yeah.
of the grade, you said.
I passed it. I passed it, but I squeaked in. I squeaked in. I was not an engineer. Yeah.
Well, Greg, we have been interviewing a lot of professors, and then we've been asking students, what do you want us to ask these professors? So a student has a question for you. So
Okay.
take a listen to this question and give your answer.
Hi, I'm Blessing. I'm a second year, and my question is, what do you think is the most important lesson students can learn while they try to integrate like faith with their education? Thank you.
Well, so from my perspective as a believer, I believe that, kind of like Spence mentioned earlier, it's my faith is my worldview. That's the underpinning of everything I do. And I also believe that God puts us in the world to meet needs and serve others. And you can do that in a bunch of different ways. So I did it as an engineer, and I did it as a engineering manager. So in the where I used to work, I would try to demonstrate living as Christ would live and how I interacted with my coworkers. And for the work that I did that was for others, it was the underpinning of who I am. A nurse can do that. A doctor can do that. A teacher can do that. A janitor can do that. It's what's the motivation for why you're doing it, regardless of the particular job that you have. So I think in fact, I think that's what makes the world go around. Thank goodness we're not all a bunch of engineers trying to, be Christian engineers. It would just be a horrible place. Thank goodness there's musicians and artists and politicians and these people that do their vocation with the underpinning of a biblical, godly worldview that can just showing love. And so I think you can do anything with that. You don't have to be a pastor to be to live a Christian life. Churches are full of them, and that's probably one of the encouraging thing about churches. There's so much diversity in the churches, different walks of life, and where people have come from and things that they do and all that kind of stuff. And you all gather and you worship the same God.
A lot of what you're saying is that your faith really informs your character and how you work, how you treat people, your motivation for what you're doing, not being
absolutely
selfish motivation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's all about others. It's not about me. It's about other people. That's the way I look at it.
So I heard Tim Keller made the argument that just doing a job well that serves the world has Christian value. And his example was if you deliver milk to a grocery store that then people drink and live well, that in and of itself has Christian value, even if you're not grabbing them by the ear and telling them the gospel. Like, what would you say that as an engineer? Would you agree or disagree?
Well, I would absolutely agree with that. But see, I think it's the way I also see this even more fundamental than that. And this really echoes this conversation I had with a student last week is there's value in working to support a family, and work is maybe most work or a lot of work is morally neutral. I mean, you can make it bad by what kind of employee, you can be a corrupt engineer or a corrupt doctor or whatnot, but in being able to contribute to society, but also being able to earn money so that, I can provide for my family. and then how you manage what God has provided provides opportunity for me to give to missionaries or to give back to the church. So the income, regardless of what you do, yes, it does that. You can bless others by the work you do that then has a secondary or tertiary effect down the road. But it's also kind of even more simplistic, as it's income that I can, take care of my family, but then also be an example in how I give and how I use God's gifts to me to show God's love, whether that's, working, volunteering, missions work, whatever. I think there's a lot of ways that can happen.
That's great. Great word.
Well, so we would love to ask you a couple machine gun questions. There's another term we have for it, rapid fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
The lightning round.
Yes. Are you ready?
I think so.
All right. So first question is, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Be patient with myself.
Okay.
I think kind of like the student I had the other day, I said, you're 20. I didn't figure out what I want to do till I was that class I talked about. I was 22 or 23 when I took that class. Give yourself time, just be where you are. God's put you where you are now, and focus on what is in front of you right now.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
So another question, what advice would you give other Christian faculty who have a desire to influence students?
I think be transparent and be vulnerable. Let them know that you're a person, you're a regular person. For me personally, it's kind of who I am, to joke about my failings in life and how I'm, kind of a goofball. And so it comes out naturally that way. And I guess some people maybe aren't comfortable with that, but I think showing your students that you're just a regular person and you've made mistakes and, you will continue to make mistakes. I think that's probably one of the best things you can do. Again, that goes towards tearing down that wall between students and faculty.
And last question, we've asked others this, but it's even more relevant for you. You grew up in Western North Carolina, and now you live at the beach, coastal engineer. Which is better, mountains or beach?
Well, if you looked at my Meet the Prof profile, my two favorite towns are Granite Falls, North Carolina, where I grew up, and Wilmington. So I didn't pick one; I picked two. So
that's cheating.
I don't know. So I'm going to be a bit of an apologist for the state of North Carolina now. I mean, North Carolina's got the beaches and the mountains. You can do both in a drive. I'm amazed when I go back home and visit my dad and just see the rolling hills. You see the mountains, and he kind of jokes. He's like, they've always been here, but when I was 18, I didn't want to look at them. I wanted to get away. Yeah. I go to the beach and I stand on the shoreline and I just see the immensity of the ocean and God's world out there. And I see it in both places. So I can't pick one or the other, because I think they're just beautiful in God's creation.
That makes sense. Well, Greg, this has been really encouraging. So students can get to know you more on meettheprof.com. And how else can they follow you or get in touch with you?
I guess email me, come see me. I would rather have face-to-face conversations. So for UNCW students, I'm in the coastal engineering building. I love talking to anybody that wants to come and talk, whether it's about engineering or the beach or the mountains or Christ. Any of those.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for this time. And
I'm
so grateful for you being in these students' lives, and grateful for your career change now to serve as faculty there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this time. I appreciate what you guys are doing in Faculty Commons, and that when the first time, Shane, you told me about this and this ministry to professors, I just went, wow, that's the way to do it. To one, meet a need for that community, but also recognize that we have that really, really significant connection to students. And so what a way to reach students is through faculty. So I think this is a great ministry.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview, and you can learn more as well as read about other Christian professors on our website, meettheprof.com. And you can search for professors by name or by state or even by college campus. And you can also find many helpful resources about questions that were in the interview and other ways of answering tough questions at cru.org, and that's cru.org. And college students, if you would like to ask a question to a professor and potentially be on the show, this is how you do it. Follow us on Instagram. It's Meet the Prof Official. And then upload us a video by direct message where you say your name, your college campus, and what year you are, and then ask your question. And you can ask more than one question. And hopefully then you can be featured on the show. And if you enjoyed this, would you please share this episode with a friend? Someone you think it would be helpful to. And please don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast. And if you're listening to this, but you would like to watch the videos of these interviews, we record them all and we put them on YouTube. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Meet the Prof Official. And we would love to meet you there. And lastly, if you would like to financially support our Faculty Commons ministry with Crew, you can do so online by going to give.crew.org/0424344. So thank you for being with us. And until next time, we hope you feel encouraged to have a Christ-centered conversation on your college campus.